So, welcome everybody to this educational webinar brought to you by the ECI development team. And our goal during this webinar is really to help you learn the right questions that you should be asking when you're looking at property overseas, whether you are a veteran property owner in another country, or perhaps you're just starting your real estate search overseas. I think you'll find a lot of great information. We paid a lot of tuition over the years so that you don't have to. So if you don't have pen and paper handy, grab that or open up Word or however it is that you're taking notes, because there's a lot of great content in this webinar that you will want to be tuning into and remembering as you're starting your international search. So with us today, we have Mike Cobb. Mike Cobb is the CEO and co-founder of ECI Development. We are a regional development company based in Latin America, have been in business for about 25 years at this point. ECI Development was Mike's baby, and it's blossomed into this really incredible organization that is geared towards helping folks find their ideal property throughout the region. So Mike has served on the board of the National Association of Realtors. He has spoken probably tens of thousands of conferences at this point, Mike, over your time in this space. But he has an incredible depth of knowledge in the international real estate world. And today he's going to share that with you. So Mike, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us today. And feel free to get started when you're ready.
Good. Well, Rachel, thank you very much. I'm not sure I've spoken at tens of thousands of conferences. I'm pretty sure I've spoken with tens of thousands of people, probably 1,000 conferences over the years. And, one of the things that always really strikes me is just how eager people are to own a property overseas. And I appreciate that. I was also eager back, goodness, in 1994. I bought my very first rental property, and my first rental property was actually a property outside the United States. I bought my rental property in Belize at the age of 30, and I was eager then. I'm eager today, but with this 25 years of experience under my belt, we have paid a lot of tuition as an organization. I've paid a lot personally as well. And so one of the things that I've really learned as I've talked with these thousands of people over the years at the various conferences or events that we've been to is that with this eagerness, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. And what we really need to do is we really need to slow down. We need to proceed with caution when we purchase property overseas. And so this presentation has evolved over the years, but it started about 20 plus years ago with a very short little presentation called the 15 questions. And it's morphed into something that's a little more sophisticated, but at the heart, it's really this idea that we don't know what we don't know. And that if we can go a little slower, we can listen a little more, we can ask better questions. And truly, when we're buying property overseas, the art of questioning, the art of asking the right questions, penetrating questions is critically important. So without further ado, let's jump into this, and maybe we'll get going here. There we go. All right. So, and this is it, right? This is really the fundamental question that I hope everybody will ask themselves right now. How do I change my thinking so that I ask better questions? How can I change my thinking, the way I think about things? And a lot of these examples are really geared to help us think differently. And you'll see why in a minute. But let's just start with this old analogy, right? We don't compare apples and oranges, do we? Right? Of course not. What do we compare? Usually I can get people to say it. But anyway, say it out loud with me. We compare apples to apples. But are all apples the same thing? Well, obviously they're not. Thin slicing is very important. Nuance is very important. And this is where the rubber meets the road when we're buying property overseas. This idea of slowing down, this idea of margarita madness, it's a horrible disease. And I served on the board of the National Association of Realtors. I've served on several of their committees. I've done a lot of work with the National Association of Realtors in the last decade. And as we look at how people buy property in the United States and in Canada, typically we find a realtor, we look at some homes, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes, and over the period of a few weeks to a few months, we make an offer, we do our due diligence, and whatever, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days later, we're sitting at a closing table with some lawyers and we're, passing paperwork around, and if we're financing at the bank, paperwork, all that stuff. When people buy property overseas, sometimes they're walking up the beach, they're having the best time of their life. Somebody grabs them off the side and says, hey, come look at these condos. And 15 minutes later, somebody's writing a check, right? Or a deposit check, maybe not the whole thing, right? Margarita madness. We don't buy property this way in the US or Canada. We shouldn't buy it this way overseas either. And it really is a function of slowing down. All right, so now we're going to dig into this concept of changing how we think, right? We don't know what we don't know. It's a pretty obvious statement. We don't know what we don't know, but it's pretty heavy too, right? And I guess the further into that one is, if we don't know what we don't know, how can we, right? How can we know what we don't know? Well, we can't, but if we change how we think, then we can start to drill into it a little bit. I like to tell this story. If anybody speaks Spanish, you will already get the punchline. But when I lived in Nicaragua. I moved to Nicaragua in 2002. I moved with my wife and then 2-year-old daughter Amanda. We went down there to get our Grand Pacifica community started, and we moved in October of 2002. And I spoke no Spanish, by the way. When I moved to Nicaragua, I spoke no Spanish. We hired a Spanish tutor, came to our home, taught myself and my wife Spanish every morning. And at Christmas time, one of the directors of our company, a gentleman by the name of Ernesto Leal, was getting married. And my wife and daughter went home. I stayed in Nicaragua. He was getting married between Christmas and New Year. And Ernesto, not only was he our director, but he was at the time the chief of staff to President Bolaños, the president of Nicaragua. And so I show up to this wedding, Ernesto's wedding, and I find myself seated at a 10-top table with the president of Nicaragua, President Bolaños. Now, what a cool thing, right? I've been in Nicaragua 3 months. So this wedding, and then weddings go on forever and over, 3, 4, 5 hours, however long it was. I'm sitting at the table with the president of Nicaragua, and we talk a lot, and people are coming and going and stuff. But at the end of the evening, like, we've had a few pretty good conversations, and we trade business cards, and he writes his personal email address on his business card, and I do the same. And then on Monday, I go into the office and I think, you know what? I'm going to send President Bolaños a little note. I'm going to wish him a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So I take out my computer, which is probably a Dell, or I think it was a Dell laptop. And I have, if you can look at this down at the bottom where it says ANO versus AN with a squiggle over the top, O, right? Well, my keyboard's a regular old US keyboard. I got the N, but I don't have the N with the squiggle on it. And I'm like, well, whatever. And so, Feliz Navidad is Merry Christmas, and Feliz Año Nuevo is Happy New Year. Well, I have the N without the squiggle, and I think, whatever, Feliz Año Nuevo. Well, instead of wishing President Bolaños a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, I did indeed wish him a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Anus. So I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how important a squiggle over an N was. I didn't know what I didn't know, and coming back to this idea of we don't compare apples and oranges, we compare apples and apples, but all apples aren't the same. And we're talking about thin slicing. We're talking about nuance, right? A squiggle over an N, right? Okay. If we really back up and we look at what we're talking about humility. If we don't know what we don't know, then we need to listen more. We need to be more careful. We need to tread lightly. We need to tread with humility, because it's in humility that we really gain our ability to ask better questions, because we're going to be listening more. And the other side of this, we don't know what we don't know, is also the idea that we need to forget what we think we know. Because when we come with assumptions, these are assumptions. And in the old, if you take the word assumption or assume, you can break it up into ASS-U-ME. It makes an ass out of you and me, right? Assume. Assumptions are also dangerous. They're equally dangerous because they may or may not apply in a new circumstance. So we're going to look at some of these things that have to do with assumptions as well as, not knowing what we don't know. So let's start with this very big picture. Many times people looking for property overseas, they get it right. They understand what they're looking for. Maybe it's this right here. It's this Caribbean water, white sand beach. But for other people, it's not. And so one of the things I like to do is just kind of put in context this idea of Latin America as many different things, or the tropics even. Just the tropics itself can be many different things, right? And so what we have in Latin America for sure is we have cold, right? If you go all the way down to the bottom of Argentina and Chile, you've got skiing, right? So you've got cold, you've got hot, you've got dry deserts, you've got humid areas, you've got urban cities, right? You've got real cities, you've got resort settings, you've got beaches, you've got mountains, you've got wide open spaces. I want to have my own farm out in the middle of nowhere. The planned communities, you've got things that are coming, and you've got places that exist today. And what's interesting is you can take all of these various factors, right? The different geography factors, the different kinds of locations, different kind of product, and you can mix and match them. Well, when we do that, here are some examples. I got 2 pages of examples here that just kind of show how you can mix and match these various geographies. Like if you said, I like the high, dry desert, and I like a vineyard community, well, that's Mendoza, Argentina, or Chile near Santiago, right? You've got the beautiful Andes Mountains, you've got a dry climate, high desert. If you like the high, cool springtime all the time, and you want an old colonial city, well, you've got Cuenca, Ecuador. It's springtime all the time, beautiful colonial city, coffee being grown in the mountains around. If you said, I love desert, but I want desert at the beach, I want Phoenix, Arizona at the beach. Well, Cabo San Lucas is desert at the beach. Ambergris Key is sort of that Key West kind of climate, right? Feel and climate. If you're looking for Southern California, the coastline of northern Costa Rica up through Nicaragua delivers that year-round Gulf, sort of that Southern California semi-arid tropical climate. If you said, I want desert, but I want it high, right? I want cool, that's San Miguel. Remember Cuenca, Ecuador, that city that's always spring? It's an old colonial city. But if you said, I want a city, but I want a modern city, well, Medellin, Colombia is springtime all the time, modern city in elevation. Cartagena, Colombia, beautiful colonial city, hot and moist, right? It's on the coast. Bariloche, Argentina with the 4 seasons, and then Panama City as well. So again, this idea that there's so many different geographies that we can mix and match, and we can really drill into getting almost anything we want in Latin America just simply by mixing and matching these various weather, geography, location, city, resort kind of things, and mixing and matching them. So anyway, important. Most people get this piece right, but I always like to put it out there because sometimes we might not think of all the various possibilities there are that would really accommodate what we're looking for from a geographical standpoint the best. And then this slide, we're just going to touch on it for a minute because many people buying property overseas are buying property primarily as an investment. Now, certainly the lifestyle folks, this slide has some relevance to that as well. But this slide is really for the people who are saying to themselves, I want to buy property overseas as an investment. And the countries or parts of a country, you can see Costa Rica is actually on here 3 times, the Caribbean, the Highlands, and the Pacific coast. Really the way I put the countries or the parts of a country on this chart was I said to myself, where would someone from Des Moines, Iowa, or the heartland of America be likely to take their honeymoon? Right? So if a couple gets married in Iowa, they're off on their honeymoon. Not very many of them going to Nicaragua. Down at the bottom, not popular. Pacific side of Costa Rica, very popular. Lots of people going to Costa Rica on their honeymoons, Pacific side of Costa Rica. And then a country like Belize is kind of in the middle, right? And why this is important is if you're looking for cash flow, established cash flow, then you probably want to be somewhere around Belize or higher, right? These are mature markets or maturing markets. They're popular, right? If you're looking for cash flow in rental business, you want people on their honeymoons, right? You want people taking vacations there. On the other hand, if you said, look, I'm willing to wait a little while to pick up my cash flow, but I really want a low price of entry, well, then you might want to look at a place like Nicaragua where you can get an oceanfront condominium for $139,000. And sure, your occupancies and your average daily rates probably aren't going to be quite what they are in the Pacific side of Costa Rica, but your cost of acquisition might be 1/3 the price. And so as Nicaragua becomes more popular and climbs this popularity, you've bought in at such a low price point that your ADRs and your occupancies later start to produce incredible yield. So this chart, as a guide to where you want to place yourself on it if you're an investor, is extremely important. So we have this chart, obviously, make it available to you as well. So coming back to the central premise of how do we change our thinking, right? How do we change our thinking so we ask better questions? Well, here are, I think we're going to maybe cover 8, I don't know, 6 or 8 of our 15 questions. We actually have 15 questions. And they're actually more than that. Some of the questions actually are many questions in one, but there's 15 questions in our guide, our consumer resource guide. You'll have the chance to request a free copy at the end. These questions are, well, we're just going to blow into it. There's 6 or 8 of them here that we'll talk about. How about this one? Is there year-round access to the property in rainy season and dry season? You know, in US and Canada, we don't often think about that question, right? There are roads that close in the snow season in the mountainous areas, but generally, most of us would imagine if we're buying a piece of property somewhere or a home somewhere that we can get there year round in the US and Canada. But this road, actually, this is a picture of the road to Grand Pacifica back when I first moved there in 2002. It was miserable. It was a horrible road. The sad reality is in the dry season, this road was a beautiful hard packed clay road and you could drive 45 miles an hour on it. But in the rainy season, it was this. So again, you got to be able to know if you can get to your property year round. And the only way you know that is if it's paved, right? If you're buying property in Latin America, in the tropics, buy it in the rainy season. You'll see the roads at their worst. Same thing here. You know, are you going to be able to get across that dry stream bed, right? In the dry season, this is an absolutely dry stream. And in the rainy season, it looks like this. And sometimes you can see it's even higher. Again, how do you get across? Well, bridges and paved roads, those kinds of things all cost money. And are they there or not? How about what kind of a different take on questioning, right? What do I want versus what do I need? Two different things, important to start to do the analysis, right? We're going to slow down. We're going to proceed with caution. And we're going to talk about something that's not very sexy. In fact, my wife always teases me. She's like, why do you talk so much about infrastructure? Well, because most people never talk about infrastructure, right? We just assume it. This is a case of, we need to forget what we think we know. Coming out of the US, coming out of Canada, we come with these assumptions that, there's all this infrastructure, there's all this engineering that's happened. There are all these inspectors and, whether it's the civil engineers or the city engineers or the county or the state, all these people have come and done all this engineering and inspected it. And no, right? So does the existing infrastructure include the kinds of utilities that you want, right? And the big one there is storm water management. Again, it's not very sexy, but we are going to talk about it anyway. Sorry, honey, if you're listening to me. Look, we take high-speed internet for granted now, right? If we don't have it, like we can't believe we don't have high-speed internet. Well, it doesn't happen by accident. It happens on purpose. It happens through intent and a lot of money being spent. And so one of the things that's going to be really important for most people buying property overseas, living overseas today, or if you're an investor, buyer, being able to provide high-speed internet to your guests because they're going to demand that, right, is what is the speed of the internet? Is it reliable? Very, very important. Something to take serious time and pay attention to. But this one's actually far more important. This is stormwater. In the tropics, in Nicaragua, for example, this is our Grand Pacifica community, but throughout Costa Rica and Panama and Belize as well, throughout Central America and even Colombia and Ecuador, right? In the tropics, it can rain a lot. It can rain inches of rain in a few hours, 4 inches of rain in 5 hours, right? And when you get that kind of rain coming down, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to go where somebody engineered it and then installed the kind of tubes or drainage to move that water where they want it to go, or it's going to go wherever God wants it to go. And that may or may not be good for your property. Storm water management. This is absolutely fundamentally critical to the integrity of your property and or your home. And so please ask to see the stormwater engineering plans when you purchase a piece of property. It's critically important. Again, if the water goes wherever it's going to go, that might or might not be a good thing for your property. Water pressure, is there water pressure, right? Is there enough water? Is there enough water pressure? Very, very important. Something that's easy to check out. But again, a developer has to spend the money to provide it. So it's easy. Go into your home or condo that you're looking at, turn on all the taps and flush the toilets, right? You're out riding horses, playing volleyball, golf, or doing whatever you're doing. You want to come back and you want to take a really nice shower, right? You've got to have water pressure to do that. And the time to check that is before you write the check. Now, this one is actually my favorite. This question is my favorite because it's the most powerful visually for people to see. Okay, look at this question. Is the home or condominium plumbed for hot water in all the bathrooms? Now, again, coming out of North America, we would just go, duh, yeah, right? I mean, of course it's plumbed for hot water. And in the US or Canada, it would be, right? Well, check out this picture. This condo right here is a beautiful $390,000 condominium. The views are spectacular. The bathroom is nice. But when you look under the sink, here's what you find. You find a cold water pipe coming out with a Y splitter, right? So you have cold water being split so that both of the taps up top on the sink have water coming out of them. But they're both cold and they'll always be cold. Now, my question to you as a consumer is simply, do you want to know that your bathroom is only plumbed with cold water before you write the check? I know I would, right? And this is, I mean, well, anyway, check it out. It's vitally important. We just checked plans for some homes that we're having constructed, and the architect did not run hot water to the sinks in the bathroom. Again, wasn't our specification. We caught it. We know what to look for, right? We saved our customers this horrible event. But if you're buying something, from a company that's not familiar with what happens in the region or how it happens in the region, you've got to be responsible for your own due diligence. So again, these are the kinds of questions we want to ask. Is there a building requirement? Is there any kind of zoning? Again, coming out of North America, of course there's zoning. Of course there's build requirements, right? I mean, this is all standard stuff. Well, when we go overseas, it's not standard stuff. Here's a set of property lines and a Google Earth where I superimpose them. And as you see, these homes, these structures, out there homes, some are, these structures actually sit across property lines. And in fact, some of them actually sit right in the middle of right-of-ways. And so what we're really talking about here is this notion of what gets built on the ground doesn't always follow the plat line. So if you were to buy one of these properties and you expected that nothing was on it, you might be mistaken. Again, understanding this so you check it and you have a lawyer check it is very, very important. Zoning, right? We would say to ourselves, well, yeah, there's zoning, but there isn't in many cases, in most cases. So you buy a beautiful home site, you spend, $200,000, $400,000 building a beautiful home, and somebody builds the Hobbit house next door, and you think, oh all right, well, But how about worse? Somebody builds a 4-story pink lighthouse and turns it into an after-hours disco bar that opens up at midnight every night, right? In your residential neighborhood. And you'd say to yourself, they can't do that. Why not? They own the dirt. It's their dirt. They want to put up a 4-story pink lighthouse and turn it into an after-hours disco bar. They can. Like, there's no zoning. Again, we need to forget what we think we know, right? Really, really important, right? And there is zoning in some cases, but we have to ask, we have to know, right? We can't assume these things, right? Is the development company financially sound? I think the answer there is we'd want to know, wouldn't we? Well, we have to ask, right? This TV commercial, many of you guys remember it, where's the beef, right? I think this next slide is where we have to be, although it's a lot harder for us as North Americans to kind of get here mentally. So when a developer tells you they're going to build a golf course or they're going to do X, Y, or Z, you as the consumer need to say, well, that's great, Mr. Developer, Mr. Real Estate Salesperson. I'm glad these guys are going to build a golf course. I love to golf. Do me a favor, print out January's bank statement, right? And show me, $4 or $5 million sitting there. Because if you're going to build a golf course, of course, you're going to have $4 or $5 million to do it, right? Okay. We as North American consumers don't think to ask these questions because there are government agencies that are in place to protect us in North America. We don't think about these kinds of things, right? But when we go overseas, the responsibility for due diligence is ours. By the way, I love the freedom of living and working overseas. I lived overseas for 14 years with my family. I stayed in Nicaragua for 14 years because we loved it, right? I love the freedom. I love working overseas because of the freedom. But the flip side of freedom is personal responsibility. And we as the consumer must step into a role that we're not familiar with, right? We're just not familiar with it anymore, and take that idea of personal responsibility and do our own due diligence. Ask for financials, right? We have people ask us for our financials all the time. Somebody wants to buy a home from us, see our financials. We'll provide them to you, right? You as a consumer have the right to ask that question, even though we don't necessarily feel comfortable doing it. You can and you should. Track record, very important, right? I mean, has the company done this kind of thing before? Do they have a business plan? Do they have a team, right? The team is so important. A lot of times, people talk about what they're going to do, but it takes a team of people to actually accomplish much of what gets done. And so it's important to meet many of the team members and understand who they are and how the company plans to get something done, right? That's really where the rubber meets the road. Will there be a community, right? If we're buying a piece of property to live in, vacation in, but probably more for living in, right? Whether it's snowbird 6 months out of the year or something full time, then this idea of community becomes really important, because theoretically anyway, we're leaving our friends, we're leaving our family, maybe our work if we're retiring or whatever it is. And all of our associations, whether it's our churches, our sporting groups, the people we hang out with and do whatever, right? We're leaving those people physically from some location and we're moving to a new location. How do we make new friends? How do we build new community? Well, there are things that have to happen. There are things that have to be present so that this idea of community can happen. One, there have to be homes or condominiums. There have to be addresses, right? Where you and other people can actually physically stay. That's important. And it doesn't sound like much, but we'll look at why it's important. There has to be access. We talked about, can people get there year round, right? Is there year-round access? Are there creature comforts? Is it a place that people enjoy being, right? Is there water pressure? Are there services and the kinds of things that people take for granted? And then how about amenities? How about places for people to gather, have fun, do things together? Well, let's look at those. Del Webb really summed it up very, very well in this first slide, when he talked about concrete, steel, and lumber make the buildings, but people make the community, right? It is about people getting together, right? It's this idea of meeting one another and building a new community. I always like to put this slide out because this is an idea of what a ghost town is. And I talked about the importance of having homes and condominiums, addresses, right? There are literally hundreds of miles of coastline throughout Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean that have been chopped up into lots, beautiful lots, right? Half-acre lots in this case on the beach, 100 feet wide, 200 feet deep, beautiful half-acre lots on the water that were sold for $100, $150, $200,000. But there's not a house in sight. They're all sold, right? It's all sold, but there's not a house in sight. And the question I would always ask at a conference, I love the show of hands, is who wants to be the first house out on this beach all by themselves? And you know what? Usually there's somebody puts their hand up and, we joke around, hey, all right, we got Robinson Crusoe in the room. But the reality is that most people want something very, very different, right? They want homes, they want neighbors, they want something that feels like a community, that becomes a community, a place where they can get together and enjoy dinner with people, play golf, hang out on the beach, just go to one another's homes and have a cookout or play cards, right? A ghost town is something very, very different. It's not community. Community is very, very special, very unique, and in some ways hard to do, right? It's what we do. We've spent 24 and a half years learning how to do it, and we do it very well, but it's hard to do. Community, so important for people looking for that lifestyle experience of owning a property and then having a place to gather. And the other side of community is really what I would call the enlargement of community. It's not just about the people who live in the homes and condominiums around you. It's about the people who live in the area around you. And how can we engage in the larger community, right? Can we do important things for the environment? Can we do things that bring people together, both the people living in our community and the community as a whole? And when we do those things, life becomes special in some pretty cool ways. And it's very easy to do this kind of social engagement and find significance and meaning in life, as somebody living overseas. We did, our family did, and still does. But it just takes the idea of community and expands it to a whole nother level. That's really cool. All right, we're coming to the end, and then we'll do some Q&A, I think. But this question, sometimes I get some, I like to tease people. If you want to boo, boo, right? What about homeowners association? Is there one, right? Is there a homeowners association? And are the fees high enough? That's usually where I ask people to give me a loud boo. Nobody wants to pay high fees. I don't want to pay high fees, right? But, if the homeowners association exists, that's the first thing. And if it takes the money and keeps it for the homeowners, right? This group of people who own properties together, and then that money is spent for the benefit of the homeowners, right? Well, then that's actually a good thing. And the question of whether or not it's high enough is critically important. Check this out. These beautiful condominiums with a swimming pool, right? Listen, the second paragraph there, the maintenance fee for these lofts is one of the most attractive things, $350 a year. It's not a mistake. I said year. So let me just ask if anyone on this call believes that you could maintain a condo building, insurance on the building, keep it clean, keep the landscaping, maintain pools, do all of the stuff that they're doing for $350 a year. If you believe that, please don't. Please don't. So why would somebody do this? Why would somebody say? Well, because people don't always think, right? They're like, wow, that's a great property owner fee. That's lower than anyone, right? And once the developer sold all 10 of these condos and put the money in his pocket and, slipped on back to the US or wherever, and the real cost of maintaining that building is apparent, right? Well, it's too late. What are you going to do? You already bought it. You own it at that point, right? So the question we have to ask ourselves as smart consumers, wise consumers, prudent consumers is, are the HOA fees high enough, right? This is a sales tool. This is not an HOA fee. Things like streets and sidewalks and street lights and security. All of these things cost money. The amenities, if there's a gym, if there are tennis courts, maintaining these takes money. And if we want to have them, right? And we want them to be in good shape so that we can continue to enjoy them, then we have to maintain them. And that means a property owner fee that's high enough to maintain the kinds of things that we enjoy doing. And you know what? If you're the kind of person who says, I don't want an HOA fee, there are properties that you can have that don't have HOA fees, and you need to find those. But you need to understand that you're kind of on your own with that too. But if you're okay with that, that's eyes wide open. That's moving into it. But for most people, we want some HOA, we want some rules, right? We want nice things and we want them cared for. It takes money to do that. So again, medical care concerns, great medical care in the region. This happens to be the hospital in Managua, had many procedures over 14 years done there, from some small surgeries to all the doctor's visits and things like that. Very, very affordable. One of the things that people, and the Johns Hopkins facility in Panama, but one of the things that people really appreciate is the affordability of the medical care overseas. These kinds of costs are really your out-of-pocket expenses for so many things. And then this idea of freedom to choose alternative methodologies, stem cell therapies, and other things that, again, are regulated so much in the United States that they're either not possible or highly expensive. And overseas, again, we have freedom. So we have to have the personal responsibility to say, you know what, I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to do my own due diligence, but I'm an adult and I have the freedom to choose things that make sense for me and my family. Again, this idea of freedom and personal responsibility really hooking up to be paramount, foundational. This idea, I mentioned it, the idea of a higher quality of life that costs less. When we moved to Nicaragua, we thought we would live there for 3 years. And at the end of three and a half years, my wife and I went out to dinner and we decided to stay a while longer. And a while turned out to be 11 more years. We lived in Nicaragua for 14 years because we had a phenomenal quality of life that cost far less than that same cost of living in the United States. The affordability, the health and wellness, the community of friends that we found, people with adventurous spirits. What you find in expats, we had lots of expat friends. We had lots of Nicaraguan friends. But when I say expats, a lot of times people think, oh, Americans and Canadians. We had some American and Canadian friends, but we had German friends, we had Swiss friends, we had Argentinian friends, we had Korean friends. We had many expats from all over the world who were our friends, and we shared this adventurous spirit. We were expats, and yeah, some were from the U.S. and Canada, but most were not. So again, this idea of a wonderful community, being able to eat organic, eating healthy, that costs so much less than just eating regular in the States and in Canada. Again, making it very, very affordable. If you want to shop at the regular supermarket, no problem. There is one, and it's pretty affordable too. But if you want to eat organic, you don't have to go pay 3 times the price. You can just run down to the local market and get something right from the farmer who's not using pesticides and herbicides and stuff like that. Very, very affordable. Again, if you like to take care of yourself, getting a massage is $15 to $20. It's again just very, very affordable. Help, whether it's in-home domestic care, whether it's gardeners, kinds of caretakers, people that will just take care of all the odds and ends in your life, or someone to do your cleaning and maybe all the stuff in your home, the laundry and things like that you don't want to do. You don't have to. It's very affordable to have other folks do that. And what happens is you end up with a lot of free time. You end up with free time because the chores of life get taken care of in a very affordable way. And if you enjoy surfing or golfing or playing tennis or working in the local community, reading English to kids at a local school, if it's a Spanish-speaking country, there are lots of things you can do to fill hours in the day that are just wonderful and magical. And again, when it's affordable to take the chore part and move it off your plate, you're creating work for somebody else who's very happy to have that job, but it frees you up to do other things in your life that are truly wonderful. So in wrapping up, just know that these 15 questions kind of package up with 3 simple principles. It's hard to remember 15 things. I get that, right? We're going to get you the link to the Consumer Resource Guide. And there's a checklist in there, by the way. The Consumer Resource Guide has a checklist of these 15 questions. If it were me, I would either take that page and print it, 6 times if I was going to go shopping for property overseas, or copy it or do whatever, and then just have it as a checklist as you're, looking at property. Does it do these things, right? But if you just keep in your mind 3 principles, 3 simple principles: buy what you see. Is it there? Right? Is it there physically? Right? Right. Own community. This idea of having friends and neighbors, things to do, right? Is it a ghost town? What about zoning? Who is there zoning? And if there is, who enforces it, right? And then know the developer, right? Ask to see financials, ask to understand, see a business plan. Hey, I want to see the business plan. I'd like to meet some people on your team, right? Know the developer. So these 3 basic principles will get you a long way down the road to asking better questions and helping us kind of ferret out what we don't know. So here we are. This is it. This is our Consumer Resource Guide. Shoot us an email, webinar@ecidevelopment.com. It's got the 15 questions. It's got the checklist. Oh, and it also has this fun little, are you ready to live overseas quiz. It's, I don't know, maybe 15, 18 questions, something like that. Great little quiz, best I've ever seen, that really kind of predicts whether or not you're going to have a fun, fast transition into a life overseas, an okay transition, or whether it's going to be a little more work. That's right at the beginning of this Consumer Resource Guide. Then there's some country profiles we put in. I think we've got 6, 8 countries that we've done a short little 3-4 page profile on in here as well. It's a great document. So please make a point to request it. And I think at this point, I'm going to ask Rachel to come back on. I hope she can get back on and answer or ask some questions.
Yes.
If you have people. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Rachel.
Of course. Hello, everybody. So great to see everyone still on here. So find that Q&A section if you do have any questions. I'll get video on. If you do have any questions, and we will just read those out loud. I don't know, Peter, what that quite understands. Victor, I don't know, you said no way. I'm not too sure what that's in regard to. I'm guessing it is the hot water spigot that Mike showed earlier in the faucet. And then Gregory is asking, why is Jamaica out of favor?
I don't know that I ever said Jamaica was out of favor. We don't really work in the Caribbean, with the exception of Belize, which is on the Caribbean, but as a Central American country, I really haven't. I've been to Jamaica once. I don't really know very much about the country. I can't comment one way or the other on it. I don't have any real basis of experience to be able to comment. So.
All right. And then I'm seeing another question here. Can you tell us a little bit more about the countries that you work in, and where do you like the best?
Yeah, great question. So our company currently works in Belize, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. We've got several different communities in Belize. We have our gardens, which is a Best Western community with a pool and the tennis courts about 3 blocks off the water on Ambergris Key. We also have our tiny home village there, which is on West Ambergris, about a mile further west. And then we've got an oceanfront property on Ambergris Key that will be our Marriott Resort and Residences. So we've got 3 different properties there. In Nicaragua, we have our Grand Pacifica community, which is huge. It's 3.5 miles of beach. And we actually have 5, now 6 distinct neighborhoods at Grand Pacifica. We've got our San Diego Viejo, which is sort of the single family homes and single family home site. We've got a Casita Village, which are 1,000 to 1,200 square foot, 1 2-bedroom homes. We have Milagro Verde, which is our first off the grid community, solar homes that are 1,500 to about 3,000 square feet. We've got a Santa Barbara neighborhood with estate oceanfront lots. We have Playa Pacifica, which is a condo community. We have our Las Perlas, which is a condo community. And we have, I think, our next building in pre-sales shortly. We're sold out on our Las Perlas at this point. And then we have our Ava, which is tiny homes. Those are off the grid solar homes low impact at Grand Pacific as well. So a lot of different neighborhoods. In Costa Rica, we own a property, but we haven't developed it yet. And in Panama, we're partners with Leif Simon and Kathy Petticord in their Los Islotes project. And then we also own a property in the mountains that we own 100% of as ECI. It's off the beach. It's halfway between David and Boquete in the mountains. It's a highlands property where later in Q2, towards the end of Q2, we'll be opening up and offering homes. Although I think, Rachel, we have a program on it coming up soon. I don't think there'll be sales yet, but it's the first formal announcement of our highlands property. When is that? What is that? And when is it?
Sure, it's next Tuesday at this time. So it's 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will be doing an official launch of that tiny home community that will be there at the Grand Highlands property in Panama. So if you have not received a link to register for it and you would like to get on that look list, that first look list, and join us for the webinar, just shoot us an email there, webinar@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll make sure you have a link to register.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And then we are also looking for property in Argentina and Chile for a vineyard community. Something in Ecuador is on the slate as well. But right now, probably the next acquisition for the company will be a property in Mexico, right outside of Puerto Vallarta in the mountains, outside of Puerto Vallarta. I was there, spent a week looking at properties with Jeff and a few other folks. I guess it's 3 weeks ago now. Anyway, we've identified some subject properties for a beautiful community that will have an agricultural basis. It will be a resilient community. We expect to have homes starting in right at 100,000 and up from there. So again, kind of crossing a pretty wide price spectrum that'll allow a lot of folks to become owners there. So that's in Mexico. That's coming. If you have any interest in that specifically, let us know that too. Rachel keeps a very good list. And as we actually have more information, concrete information, right now we're just evaluating properties. I'll head back down there in probably another 6-8 weeks to look at the last few properties and maybe settle on one to make an offer. So Mexico is going to be the next community, the next part of the world that we do something in. I'm pretty sure. I mean, the future, we never know the future, but we're tracking hard on it, and we're very, very excited about it.
Awesome. And that segues into Victor's question, which is, I heard your company may be developing a Mexico community. Can you expand on this? So Mike, why don't you just give us a little bit more about the timelines for this property, and if we do decide to move forward, what people can expect as to when they can see site maps and floor plans and all the good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, some of it's pretty easy and some of it's not. So, we've identified a property that's a pretty good subject property. We have a secondary backup property that's also very good. It's just a little further, and location is important, and distance from the airport. Those are pretty big factors. But anyway, let's assume that I'm back down there in 60 days. We look at a couple more properties, either the one we initially saw as the best, or we find something. Then what we'll do is we will begin what I call the initial due diligence. So, we get with the property owners, we get our lawyers, we look at all the documents, the titles, the maps, all those kinds of things. And that takes about 60 to 90 days before we're really willing to make an offer on the property. So, if that's happening, probably have an offer in on the property by mid to late summer. And once we make the offer, we can run a lot of things concurrently. So for example, we have a lot of and one of the things that ECI has done so well is we have been around. This is our 25th year of business. So we've got a team of people that are seasoned executives. We have processes and procedures. We have a marketing department. We have an architectural and an engineering department. We've got, and we understand how to take we already have. We've taken what we've learned over the years and we've institutionalized that knowledge so that we can take it to Mexico. We can take our team to Mexico. Obviously, we're going to be hiring lots of folks in Mexico, Mexican engineers, Mexican architects, but we don't have to invent the wheel in Mexico. We can take the wheel that's worked so well other places and we can say, okay, here it is. Let's adapt it to the Mexican law, right? And civil law is pretty similar. So you're not really changing very much. Some of the engineering standards, the soils and other rainfall and other things that come into play. But again, we take what we've already institutionalized, we layer it on top of what we're doing there. We bring in a Mexican team, we create the Mexican team, we integrate. And so by mid to late fall, I think, assuming that, we can, the due diligence goes fine, there are no issues, we make the offer's accepted, say by, August, for example. By November, December, we will have site plans, we will have home models. In fact, we already pretty much have a lot of the home models already. Again, they'll be changed, they'll be tweaked for the right environment. They have to, fit it has to be authentic to the property. It has to be authentic to the region. So there are certain things we will do. But for example, the gray water reuse, the solar components. Fundamentally, a lot of the engineering for a structure, that's the same. It doesn't change. It's a seismic zone, the same as Nicaragua, same as Costa Rica, same as Panama. So many of these things change. So does the facades change? Do the look and feel change a little bit? Yes. But fundamentally, the bones are the same. So we'll be able to come out with home models. We'll be able to come out with site planning. We'll probably even be able to come out with lot maps where people could say, I like this home and I want it on this lot, or whatever it is, right? And again, it's going to be an agriculturally based community. There's going to be high levels of resilience built into it with a lot of the off-grid, the solar, not just at the home level, but also at the community level. So these types of things are going to make it very special. So by November, December, I think we'll have opportunities for folks to start making property selections. We call them soft reservations. $1,000 reservation holds it until we can actually get, final permits and approvals. Once we'd have that maybe about this time next year. So we're really talking 12 to 16 months. Somebody could, begin we can begin the construction of their home, handing people keys to a home in maybe, August or September of 2022. So maybe 18 months from now, the first residents moving into that community. So there's sort of the general timeline if everything kind of goes normal. That's not fast. That's not slow. That's just sort of based on our experience, what's probable. And to give you the reason, we're doing it right now in Panama. COVID really, changed the dynamic of offices being open and things being closed in Panama and not being able to process, through the legal system in Panama. Sadly, last year, we received the title to our property, the registered deed, in January of 2021, just 60 days ago. And we are already to the point of having our, again, we didn't wait till we got that. We gave the local architect and engineering team home models last summer. They're coming through and they couldn't do anything until we actually got our title registered, but we should have actual building permits in hand sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so again, because we've institutionalized how we do business, we're able to really get a lot of this stuff done in a parallel tracking as opposed to serial, which tends to really stretch things out. So long answer. Sorry, Rachel. I think I wandered all over the place there, but
no. That was great, because that is a question that we've been getting quite a bit, especially about this Mexico property. And for folks to hear that it's not a new process for us, but we've done it before. We've worked in various countries with the same sort of structure. I think it's reassuring as well. So great answer there, Mike. All right. So the next question I'm seeing here is, are there ever issues crossing country borders? And is it best to be a citizen of both the US and the country that you buy in?
Citizenship's a big question. I'm a big fan of second residencies. I have one. I'm a US citizen. I'm a resident of Nicaragua. It allows me to enter Nicaragua. It allows me to stay in Nicaragua. I'm a permanent resident there. If I choose to live the rest of my life in Nicaragua, I can. But I live in the US as a US citizen right now. So I think citizen of another country is a much bigger step, and it may or may not make sense, but and it's also more expensive. Typically getting a citizenship takes longer and costs more money, and doesn't necessarily convey maybe more more benefit, right? And in some cases, I think it does, depending on the person and what your goals and objectives are. But I do believe that in almost all cases, if you own a property in another country, you probably want to be a resident of that country. I mean, I'm sorry, unless it's an investment property. If you own an investment property and you're never there, it doesn't matter. But if it's a property you intend to use a lot or full time, then I do think residency in that country does make a lot of sense.
All righty, perfect. Next question here I'm seeing is from Michael C. And he says, can you talk about the safety and stability of the government in Belize?
Safety and stability of what, Rachel?
Safety and stability of the government in Belize.
Oh, the government in Belize. You know, look, Belize has been a functioning democracy on its own since 1981, but prior to that, it was part of the British Commonwealth system as you know, British Honduras for 300 years. They've got a very long 300 plus year tradition of, you know, just sort of, I'm going to call stable political process. And I like Belize for a lot of reasons. You know, it's funny, I don't ever really worry about political stability in any of the countries that much. I live by a philosophy, and I encourage this philosophy in others, that when I'm in Belize or I'm in Nicaragua or Mexico or wherever I am, you know, I'm a guest in that country. And even as a resident of Nicaragua, I'm still a guest. I'm not a citizen of Nicaragua. I'm not Nicaraguan, right? I'm a resident. I'm there as a guest. And so therefore I have no opinion on politics. I don't convey anything on that. So I find that, you know, when I'm just, you know, kind of keep my nose to what I'm, you know, supposed to be looking at, which is, you know, my life, my fun, my business, whatever it is, that the politics of a country really have very little, if any, impact on me personally or our business. But that's me. That's just my opinion. I'm very comfortable with the stability of Belize, to answer your question. But I'm comfortable with, you know, with Mexico and Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Panama too. So, yeah.
All righty, very good. And then Lisa says, super exciting about Puerto Vallarta. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation, excellent information. So you're very welcome there, Lisa. And the next question I see is from Elizabeth, and she's saying, does ECI assist with property management if I want to rent my property while I'm not in residence?
Yes, we do. We have a property and rental management group, and that's exactly what they do. So yeah, it's you know, it's again, depending on where you're looking, what you really want to achieve. Well, I guess we can't really send that question in. The reason I'm bumping around on that, the short answer is absolutely we do it. We do it for a ton of people. However, it's really a very personalized thing. How you do rental management for somebody really depends upon how much you want to use it, when you want to use it, and what the best options are for you. And so send that question in specifically in an email and let one of our property consultants answer it for you specifically. Short answer is yes, absolutely. We do it. We're very good at it. But how we do it will depend on your use criteria and what property you want to own. So it's a personal thing, and we will drill it down and customize the answer for you specifically.
All right, and that goes along with what Lawrence was asking, which is a very general and broad question here, which are examples of HOA fees in the ECI developments. I mean, I can answer that.
Please.
I mean, it ranges depending on the location. Belize, with our Grand Bay Best Western, it's about 50 cents a square foot. With our property in Nicaragua, it's about $2.62 a square meter for the lots. But it just varies across the board. And, you know, like Mike mentioned, it just costs what it costs to maintain it. And any money that isn't used is put in the reserve fund for the homeowner. So Lawrence, if you have a specific property in mind, I know I've seen your name pop up a couple of times, but reach out to us and we can certainly get the specific details to you. because it is a very general question. And same with the management fees. It's a pretty standard 70-30 across the board. 70% goes to the owner, 30% goes to the management company. But of course, there are exceptions. So just reach out to us if you have a specific property in mind. And then I see we're a little bit past the hour here, but I see a question that has been asked quite a bit. So I think it's a pretty quick answer, but it's, do you provide timeshare type opportunities, and do your properties discourage Airbnb type situations?
The answer is no, we are not timeshare. Everything we do is full ownership, whole ownership, titled ownership. I don't know what you want to call it. When our clients own the property outright, so it's not fractionalized or time shared in any way. And in terms of Airbnb, there's only two exceptions, right? The answer is anyone's free to choose our rental management or Airbnb it. You have that choice. We are all about freedom and your freedom to do with your property as you choose. The two exceptions, one is the Marriott Resort and Residences in Belize. It is your property. You do not have to rent it. You can live in it. You can lock it up. It's your property. However, if you rent it, it must be rented in the Marriott program. So we tell you that up front, so there's no surprises. The Marriott is that way, and the Best Western Gardens is also that way. But the rest of our properties that are not branded by a hotel brand, you have full flexibility to either have us rent it, do your own rental, Airbnb, and you're allowed to do that within, but again, it has to, you've got to have, again, you have to follow the HOA rules. I mean, there are noise, you can't have parties at 4 a.m. and, throw stuff off your balcony. I mean, there's all kinds of things that come into it that make it a real, it's a real place to live. And we do have people who live there as well. So we build residential resort communities, and they're a little bit different than what I would call just your typical condo hotels, which a typical condo hotel is more of a resort, right? It's in and out, in and out, in and out, lots of nightly, weekly kind of traffic. Our properties tend to be more resort, residential resort. And so we do have nightly, and we do have the ability to rent properties, and a lot of people do that. But a lot of our owners choose to live there. And the benefit really is twofold. One, for the people who live there, we're creating a real community. So people come, they make new friends, and they love coming back and hanging out. And then the other thing is for the nightly renters, it's really cool as well, because now when the nightly renters are there, they also become part of that community. And what we've seen is a ton of repeat renters who keep coming back because they love the community of people at this resort. So it's a unique thing. Anyway, but to answer your question, yes, except for the Marriott and the Best Western, you're free to Airbnb it or utilize our rental management services.
Awesome. And I know that was a bit of a longer answer to it, but
Sorry.
It is available. But that was good, Mike. And it's important for people to hear, because I think a lot of times, in a sense, Airbnb has jaded a lot of us in the sense of thinking that it's easy to rent out properties. But, I'm going to just highly suggest that if you're not living, right next door or within close proximity, don't even bother to Airbnb it. Just go through the rental management company. This is their job. This is what they get paid for, to bring people in to put heads on beds. But we can certainly talk about that more specifically, Michael, because
and to answer that just a little bit more, in the U.S., again, this sort of comes with the idea of we come with assumptions, right? We got to forget what we think we know. In the U.S., it's really easy to mail somebody a set of keys or have a maid service that does 20 of these around New York City or wherever it is, right? Well, in Latin America, those kinds of services just simply don't exist. So you are free to do it on your own, but doing it on your own is a very different thing. And Rachel's right. Most people choose our rental management services. Some people choose, to do it differently and then come back. But there's a reason we do it, and there's a reason that most people pick our services. But you're not locked into it. There's no obligation for you to do that. We just find that we do a pretty good job of it, and most people do end up picking our services. But but it's a choice. It's freedom of choice for you, the consumer, to decide what you want to do.
Yes, exactly right. All right, everybody. Well, I know we're about 7 minutes after the hour here. I'm sorry. We'd like to be respectful of your time, but we do thank those of you who've stayed on with us today and have hopefully learned something new. Mike, thank you so much for all of the great information that you shared. This is awesome. I know I've been with you about 9 years as part of the organization, and I still pick up on some new tidbits. So for those of you who are hearing it for the first time, check out the recording. We will be sending out an email with the recording to everybody who attended. And I know a few of you joined a little bit late, but you will still receive a copy of the recording in your inbox. Check in about 35 to 40 minutes. If you don't see it, please check spam or promotions. Sometimes we do go into those folders, but we just want to make sure that we are able to get in touch with you and get you the information that you request. So do check those folders out. And everybody, thank you so much. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. And we look forward to chatting with you and hopefully seeing you down here in Belize or wherever sometime soon.
Good.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.